Hello, dear ones, here at the Indigo Rose Lounge. I am your host, Alyce Dylan. And this is a space for you to just be, to be free, to be the indigo beautiful human being that you are on the leading edge of the evolution of humanity. And in this space, even if you can't see them, there are other visitors here at different times. And so you are greeting your fellow humans, your fellow souls, as you visit with us here. And we also get to meet and greet the people who are with you, all of the folk that are with you. And so this is an interesting observation I thought I'd share with you, and that is identifying fellow indigos in spiritually perceptive individuals. Identification of our peeps. How do we know when other people are indigo or spiritually perceptive, even when they don't know themselves? And a lot of people, remember, have been in the closet. They've been in the indigo closet their whole lives because at some point in their childhood, they learned to shut up. Don't tell the elders. Don't tell the elders that you know what's going on here. Don't tell them that you know that they just lied. Don't tell them that you know this news report is false and that's not true. If you say that, they will look at you oddly and you will not be approved of. And of course, our human conditioning, our human experience, born out of centuries of survival, is to try to fit in. So I think where the convergence of ADHD comes in is that those of us who were also went through certain dynamics that created created the room for an ADHD diagnosis, those of us just didn't shut up, or at least we shut up less. And so we got ourselves black sheep labeled, etc. But perhaps as an advantage, did not lose as much of our spiritual perception as our fellows who shut it down in order to put in. I think that's where the meeting place of ADHD and indigo really surfaces. I think a lot of the indigos out there might not fit the diagnosis of ADHD or neurodivergent in various ways. But I think that they point to us as ADHD because maybe some of the loudest of us were. Do you see how that would work? And so my question about labels comes from this very simple demonstration. So to the gentlemen out there, what if I told you that a bunch of women had gotten together and these women had all decided what your problems were and what you should be diagnosed with and how to fix it? And it just so happened that their studies were being funded by pharmaceutical companies and that the medication for your condition was pharmaceutical. Wouldn't that raise a couple of eyebrows? Wouldn't you just maybe not, hey? If that same group was an objective group who were men, there might be more scope for it, right? And I can reverse those roles and say, ladies, what if we were told that there were a bunch of men who had done this study? Yeah, so on. I think we're in an open enough era now that at least the subject of men and women and diagnosing each other would demonstrate the point that I have an objection to. So if somebody said to me that unmedicated and freely indigo adult individuals had participated in researching the spiritually perceptive and had come up with a number of things, I might have room to consider that. But I will not be diagnosed by a group of white coats who A, don't believe that it's possible for me to exist or will not accept it, or who are being funded by a bunch of other white coats who make their money medicating people like me. Does that make sense to everybody? I don't think it's a hardline objection. I don't think it's a crazy person objection. I think when enough of us step in our truth and in our authenticity and in full knowledge of the variance of our translations or the various variations of our translation channels, when we sit together and really delve these topics, we'll be able to come up with some very interesting conclusions and a growing study of us. Yeah? Let's have a growing study of us. Let's have a maturing evaluation of the indigo population of the spiritually perceptive. We really have absolutely no idea how far we can go. We don't know what tomorrow looks like because we're just scratching the surface on today. We've worked so hard just to be allowed to exist and then manage the process of existing. Still online, the most searched for empath related question is how to cope. How do I cope with being on the leading edge of humanity, being a new age human being, being on the front lines of the evolution of humanity? How do I cope with that? Yes, and it's not easy. It is not easy because we face challenges every day that 5-sensed human beings have no idea of. And if we explain them to 5-sensed humans, their response is, well, take this pill and you won't get that anymore. Never mind the fact that our entire personality, that our entire survival up to this point has depended upon our sixth sense. But if we take this pill, we'll shut off that sixth sense and then surely we'll be fine. We'll be like them. And I think that's still what humanity wants to try and achieve. Let guide us all into this narrow lane that we can only be one way, which is interesting as we've recently emerged from this very divergent lane issue. Like anybody can be anything as long as they identify as that. And in a positive sense, a positive spin-off is that I get to be not neurodivergent but spiritually perceptive, and I get to be the empath, clairvoyant, clairaudient medium that I am authentically, and within the barrage of existing argument and prevailing social custom, nobody can say anything different. Nobody can tell me that that's not okay. So there are silver linings, yes, there are silver linings, dear ones, to everything, truly. And in the midst of all of this, we've got such chaos in the world. And what do we do with that? And loves, I'm going to say it again, our best service to humanity and ourselves right now is to get yourself from centered awareness in your human experience to elevated awareness in your spiritual reality. And from there, you can manage your human experience more deftly and with better guidance because you have your own spiritual guidance. And we can then, as a community of spiritually perceptive individuals from any background, in any faith, and anywhere, we can have a basis of mutual support and communication. And I think that's the first step. I think we all need to get ourselves balanced, get ourselves lined up, get ourselves whole, healed, and functional. There are a lot of us that aren't. And then maybe reach out to others who are still non-functional, hiding in indigo cupboards, and help gently ease them out. And that's why I lay out perspectives in my book not as, I know the truth, and no, this is me saying, this is the perspective on life that has served me well. This is the perspective that's helped me to maintain my sanity. It's not from me, all of it. Most of it is referenced from various spiritual texts or various spiritual learnings. Some of it, yes, I download as I go along, but a lot of my framework comes from existing concepts and ideas, mostly on spiritual paths. Here's a perspective, here's a framework that will guide you, that will help you get your feet under you and survive your everyday life, will help keep you centered and focused. And as we get onto that subject, how important do you think it is, as a spiritual person having a human experience, or a spiritual being having a human experience, to work through the minutiae of our emotional grid work? So in other words, from year dot to, let's say you're in your 20s before you start self-awareness and self-exploration, how important is it to work through every single little reaction and bias and understanding of the human experience when you know that you are a spiritual being having this human experience? Do you see what I'm saying? A lot of people get to spiritual awareness through self-awareness, and that's a perfectly acceptable logical path. You understand that you as a human being had this trauma as a child, therefore you have this reaction, therefore there's a pile of stuff that you can work through and let go of. Wonderful. What I have found is that it is a simpler process to elevate your awareness to your spiritual truth, to your spiritual being, and from that perspective, looking back at your human experience, what is relevant and what isn't, what's worth working out, and what you can just let go of, becomes clearer. If anything, it's a shortcut. It's a shortcut to, oh, I just reacted this way to this person. That's because of that trauma I once experienced. Interesting. Oh, well, that no longer serves me, so I'm going to just let that one go and move on from there. Or you can sit for weeks wallowing in the emotional repercussions of your childhood trauma, of your impactful experiences, of your cell memory. Some of the grid work that we operate out of doesn't even come from us. It comes from our parents and their parents' parents and their parents' parents' parents. So some of this, and we glorify our emotions. It's one thing to say, oh, wow, I'm feeling like this right now. That's interesting. I wonder why that is. Okay, it's valid or it's invalid. And not to say that any emotion is really invalid, but it's maybe finding misguided expression in the moment. So you have a choice in every moment. I can get mad at the injustice I'm witnessing, but at the same time evaluate for myself how effective or what outcome is my anger going to bring to this situation. Is there any good to come from being angry in this dynamic? Is it going to teach someone something, or is it just going to be me vomiting an emotion? And if just an uncomfortable display of emotion is not really going to serve any long-term purpose here, is there a way I can better express how I view this? So I can have the human experience. I can be here. I can be visceral. I can be human. I can identify injustice. And I can express that. But sometimes it's not necessary to emotionally vomit all over everybody in a moment. Yeah, do you see that? So being an indigo gives you the capacity to elevate to your spiritual self, to be your authentic self, and from that elevation, really analyze and assess what of these things that I'm feeling, thinking, receive, what of these are mine, firstly, what are not mine, and then when I'm left with what's mine, what serves me, and what is simply the result of me stubbing my toe on some other thing. And should I just put a bandage on it and carry on? What can I pull out of my ancestral line at this point? What can I heal here? And what can I let go? We spent quite a few decades glorifying the value of human experience in emotional terms. And I don't know that that was always very valuable to the people who went through it. I think sometimes it's a very nice perspective to know that we are spiritual beings. This human experience is very temporary. We can find the origin point of the emotional response and we can evaluate it for ourselves and then choose to go with it or not. And in that way, keep life less messy, both for ourselves and for everybody else, because ultimately peace is our friend. And when we leave our surroundings gentler and calmer and more peaceful than they were before we arrived, then we make room for others to love, always.